All right, I am recording the meeting. It is there, ready to go. Um, we got a lot to go over. A lot of stuff has happened on the city council. A lot of stuff happening in the city here the last few weeks. Let me change my view, actually. Hold on. Before we get going, I'm going to do my view. All these small little things gonna do. View, there it is. Speaker. All right. As usual, please just raise your hand or put your comments into the comment box. This is being live streamed to Facebook as well. If you're on Facebook, I'll throw a link up onto the comment section where you can jump on and join. But yeah, anyone has a question or comment during the thing, just jump on in. And let's see. First thing on the agenda, let's go over the election. Election 2025, March. And there's a lot of stuff happening in our city for the March election. There are, let's see here. There's District 1 is up for, it's my seat. I'm termed out. There's three candidates there. In fact, it's Rolf Strutzenberg is currently on the school board. It is Brad Waller, who's running again. He ran against me last time. And then it's a guy named Darren King. I don't know anything about him and where he's from and what he's done. Um, and in District 2, Todd Lowenstein is termed out. And he is, there are two challengers to that position. Guy Chadwick Castle. He's on one of the commissions. He has been part of the Ed Foundation. And let's see, what else? He's been walking around for a couple of months in the community. And then there's a guy named Louis Burke who is put his paperwork in. His dad, I believe, was a council member in District 2. He's one of the big things about his dad that I've heard is that he was the one that helped stop the uh, at Veterans Park. There was supposed to be a retirement center, a huge, massive retirement building being built there, and he helped stop that. That was back in the early 70s. And what's so important about that is there was a lot of stuff happening along our coastline in the early 70s before the Coastal Commission was created. And in fact, it was so much so that that's actually Redondo Beach is one of the reasons why the Coastal Commission was created. So big thanks to that. So that's Louis Burke. He's running, his ballot statement is all about the AES power plant site and dealing with that. That's a big deal right in the harbor and the AES site. Then there's District 4, where we have the incumbent Zain Obaji, council member. Has been there for 4 years now, and he's running for re-election. And then a lady by the name of Terry Hunt is running against him and challenging him. Her ballot statement she's a third generation Redondoan, and grew up here in the South Bay, and she's making it happen. Let's see who else we have. That's for the districts and for the mayoral campaign. It is not considered an open position because we do have an appointed incumbent, Mayor Jim Light, who, when he was appointed, said that he wouldn't run, is now decided he's going to run. And he is put his paperwork in and qualified. And then I put in my paperwork and I'm qualified. I'm running. I've been my campaign up and running for a few months now, and it's been going well. And then we've got, let's see, Jeff Ginsburg, who's a former District 1 council member, who he was from 2013 to 2016 for 3 years. And let's see, who else? We got Joan Irvine, who is also in District 1. Hasn't been on a commission, but has been very involved in the politics here in Redondo. She's running for mayor. And then Georgette Gantner, she's also running for mayor. She's been on a arts commission for 10 years. And she's talked a lot about Artesia Boulevard and the arts. And so she's running as well. And then on the city attorney side, we have two people. So we have the incumbent city attorney who's not running. He said he's not going to run, and he didn't turn in paperwork. He's retiring out. and we got Joy Abaquine, who currently works in his department underneath him, who's current city prosecutor running for that position. And we got Steve Colin, who's on the line here, and he is a former two-term council member for 8 years, 9 years. There you go, back in the early 90s. Has been a lawyer for a long time, was Bill Brand's lawyer for our court case. And that runs out, I believe, school board. And there's three people on the school board that are running, two incumbents and one open position because Rolf is not running for re-election. There's one open spot, and so there's only one person that is putting that in. And that means there's no real election there. There's no choice. You're getting all three of those people there for school board. And I'm going to have all the ballot statements up on my website. I currently have all of the individuals on the website right now, all the people. And then I will also have um, what do you call it? The ballot statements for what I'm going into next, the charter amendments on there as well. But right now, I'll just put in a link in the chat box. So you guys, if you want to check it out. Nancy, to answer your question, Rolf is running for District 1 council member. So you sent me a message here a minute ago. All right. So that's rounds out the candidates. So we've got a lot of candidates running. Every single position has more than one candidate running, except for the school board. I got a lot of questions on the school board. A lot of people called me on the school board. I told everyone to run. Unfortunately, we only have those three, so you don't have a choice there. It's kind of a problem with our election electoral system. If you only have one person or however many people for the open spots, there's no real choice. So that's unfortunate. So going to the next item, we have our charter amendments. We have a whole lot of charter amendments, 6 in total. Somebody made a comment to me a few weeks ago about us on the city council been throwing a lot at you for charter amendments. We had, was it 4 or 5 RB charter? We had four or five charter amendments in 2023, and deal everything from contracts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 contracts, payments, procedures, signatures, gender neutral language, how we do our elections, ranked choice. And then we came back with another charter amendment this last November, which was an update to Measure DD, which is a quick synopsis on that. The reason why we had that, thankfully, it passed. Thank you very much for voting yes on it. It dealt physically with our housing element and the lawsuits that we've had. So we've had 7 different lawsuits from one individual, which means about 2 or 3 of those, 4 of those were specifically regarding their AES power plant site and the ownership he lives across the street, or the property he owns across the street. Those have been court battles. We've been winning these court battles. The problem is the judges have come up with different opinions. And then we've had the state housing laws in place and the Coastal Act, so the Coastal Commission, and all that kind of blending together, meaning we had to figure out a way to get our charter kind of in uniformity with what we've said we'd be doing, which is for our housing element, for housing. And the charter amendment we had this last fall was on there to rectify that. Glad it passed, which means our housing element, which is a big document from the state of California. We are in full compliance with that, and we are good to go. And that leads me into the general plan topic, which I will talk about in a few minutes. But right now, we're going to talk about the city charter and updates there. So we have, I see one city charter member as well. Bob, if you want to jump on at any point in time, let me know. We have 6 more city charter amendments this spring that we're going to deal with. And I'll go over them all very briefly and I'll break them down. 2 for the city treasurer's department, 2 for the city clerk's department, 1 deals with publishing, and 1 deals with residency. and I'm not going to be voting for the presidency. My thing has been very simple. I put all of this on the ballot, let the voters decide. It's for them to decide whether or not I agree with the ballot question or not is a different story. So, starting off with the treasurer's position, the charter committee, which we assigned a couple of years ago, about 3, 4 years ago, uh, went over our city charter with a fine-tooth comb. And in doing that, found a tremendous amount of inconsistencies with the way we do current business in Redondo Beach with and the way our city charter said we should be doing business. So taking that into effect and looking at what our current practices are. For instance, we had Moss Adams, a third party, come through and say, you should really change their business practices, and here's why. Here's how you should do your accounting differently. Taking that whole conversation to play, we've had our city treasurer. Uh, we have two changes. One change is to do the duties, change the duties as to what the charter requires the uh, uh, the treasurer to be in charge of. For instance, cash handling. No more cash. Cash hasn't been going through that office for many, many years. Um, and properly allow access to data and information for the city treasurer to do provide reports and create reports. That's really in a nutshell kind of what's happening. I really, really hope that one passes. It's important. It's vital that it passes. Um, I
If I
wrote,
could interrupt for a second, Nils,
yes, go for it.
on that one for the treasurer,
Yep,
before Gene got into office, the duties of the treasurer were changed basically by fiat, and they never bothered to change the charter to match up with what the treasurer now exactly does.
yep,
So essentially, the treasurer is violating the charter every single day. And what we tried to do on the charter review committee was to deal with what the treasurer ought to be doing and bring the charter in line with uh, what it says that he's supposed to do. And that's what that item is all about. It's to bring the charter into the reality of today's city government.
yep. So we're removing some duties, handling money, handling of monthly financial reports that aren't happening, and then we're adding some rights and duties to the treasurer so that
1 second, Nils. It's not that they're not happening; they're happening differently.
it, thank you. They're happening somewhere else in the city.
Right. They're
Right.
still available to the public. They're still, but they are under the city manager now, because that's the way that city government finances operate today.
Yep. And when our charter was written in 1949, it has been updated since.
Yes.
Pretty vital that we update this.
Mhm.
And now we also have make sure that the its position maintains an autonomous role of oversight, which is really important, and direct auditing of collection of taxes and fees, which is also important as well. So these are things that are being added to guarantee access and to create review of monthly income and expenditure reports. Really, really important. We also added, so there are no qualifications on the city treasurer. So I've always said this for a long time. The city treasurer can be an 18-year-old out of high school and be voted in to handle $100 million worth of assets. And I'm actually perfectly fine with that because of a whole sort of different reasons. Primary reason is it's the individual's to run for office. A person's right to run for office is a fundamental right. Been said many times throughout. And so when we start adding qualifications to the position, you start cutting out the ability for people to run for this particular office or any particular office, other than what's legally required. And I'm saying that because of a very important reason. And that is when we're putting in these qualifications, I feel personally that the voters should decide what the qualifications are. To Mr. Pinsler's point a minute ago, what he just talked about was the way we do business has changed throughout the city. The treasurer is now acting more in a way, more of like a autonomous role of oversight as that tax administrator, as auditing, uh,
An investment manager.
investment manager. And you might sit there and say, well, Nils, you just said the city has over $100 million of assets. You think an 18-year-old one should be in charge of that? The issue here is not that it's the cities can only invest with guardrails in place as per the state of California, because there's been so many issues in the past with other cities going bankrupt and the like. There's a significant number of guardrails, and everything that the city treasurer does, or in terms of policy, how they invest, has to go to the city council to get approval. And anyone can run for city council, 18-year-old, 19-year-old. So I feel it's really important to have as broad of a base as possible on the individuals who can run, and then let the voters decide what the qualifications should be. And City of El Segundo just had an election for their city treasurer. No one ran for that position. No one ran. I might have been city clerk. I was city treasurer. Um, Elected position. No one ran for that position. Seat is empty. Same thing happened over in Claremont, I think it was, or Pomona, one of the cities over there. One of the positions, nobody ran for the position, so position stays open. Um, it comes down for me a fundamental question of why are these professional positions elected in this day and age? And I don't believe they should be elected. I think they should be appointed or hired by the city manager. Most cities do it this way. Going to the city clerk now, we added and changed the qualifications for the city clerk, and we do government accounting in our city clerk's office. And
The
Bob,
only city in California that does
right there, only city
that.
in California. So, and you did your research on this, right, Bob?
I did. I read every single charter in the state,
Wow.
and there is not a single city that has the kind of infrastructure of the clerk's department that we do. The other thing about the clerk's department is that it has changed. The business of clerking has changed. It's an electronics management system.
Mhm.
It's a data management system, as opposed to what it was in the past. It used to be, and it still actually is legally, the budget has to go through the city clerk's office. And the city clerk can literally stop the city's operation by saying, I don't want to review that stuff. And literally that the city clerk's office has a filibuster
Yep.
on the actions of the city. And that's what we wanted to change from the charter review committee.
The same thing with the city attorney's office. We'll get to that a little bit later on.
And that's
But
different.
we're
That's
actually
another
there's no
story.
ballot measure
No.
changes for the city attorney's office. So actually, we won't talk about that. But these elected positions, you bring up a really good point there, Bob. Is there's things in the charter what they're supposed to do that they're not doing it because things have changed. Going back to the duties and the qualifications, these qualifications are ever expanding and changing and moving with the role as the role changes. So again, adding qualifications to these particular positions hamstrings people from coming in and prevents the electorate from properly choosing what they should feel is the problem. So for instance, if there's an auditing problem, if there's someone not properly filing and accounting, what if the new clerk comes in, to Bob's point, isn't electronically savvy? And now we get someone who wants to come in who wants to be electronically savvy and really push all this paperwork to online digital. And that's a big question. I've been pushing the city of Redondo Beach to go paperless, finding out every few months how much more paper is left. In fact, we used to have a 4-to-1 ratio of printers versus personnel. So for every 4 personnel, we had 1 printer. That's a lot of paper, a lot of ink. That's very expensive. So, real quick, I'll get to the duty changes, and Gene, I'll let you ask your question. The duty changes for the city clerk: we're removing assembly of the budget, supervising of all expenditures and disbursements, general accounting, inventory system, monthly and year-end financial statements, and approving of all payments. It's supposed to be all going through the city clerk's office. It's not really happening anyways right now, but we are adding overseeing the city elections, which is something that she already does, but not in the city charter. Reviewing of the city expenditures, and if there's a problem or see a problem, the ability to go to the city manager, and if there continues to be a discrepancy, to go to the city council. Rights to access the city's financial system, so we're ensuring that the right of the city clerk is there to access the financial system. So we're beefing up kind of the auditing oversight and taking away things that just didn't exist. Gene, your hand is up. Question or comment?
Um, you kind of answered a little bit of it, but I had a problem with why we're adding all this accounting nonsense and requirements to a city clerk. I looked up the City Clerks Association of California, and the description of a city clerk's duties is that a city clerk is a local official for elections, local legislation, Public Records Act, Political Reform Act, and the Brown Act. Before and after a city council takes action, the city clerk ensures that actions are in compliance with federal, state, and local statutes and regulations. And what they do is um, those are the basic functions. And then they keep the records of the city. They're the records manager. As a legislative administrator, they play a role in the decision-making process of the local legislature, and they're basically the liaison between the public and the city council. But nowhere in there is there anything about a budget, a need for accounting, and all this stuff that I mean, I'd be an
We
honest
we
city clerk if I wanted to, but I don't have 5 years of accounting background. And
well, right now there are 15 units of accounting required in the city charter.
that's
Uh,
ridiculous. I'm sorry.
it's completely ridiculous. And I was on your side on the charter review, but there was a uh, an obstreperous city clerk who forced a compromise. And the issue with that was the feeling that we were taking away the quote unquote checks and balances that were in the city. And by enabling her to, or anybody who's in that, we're not specifically talking about an individual, because as we understood it, she's not going to run the next time for a re-election. So the next person that comes in, we wanted to make sure that there is a limitation on the impact that they could have by being uh, in their concerns. They have to do a response or a notification within a certain amount of time. I think it's 45 days, not that. And so it was a compromise. I wasn't particularly thrilled with it, but it is way better than what we have now.
Yeah, that you guys are just speaking exactly to the point that I'm talking about and thinking is having qualifications in here hamstrings the choices. Having the current elected in that position determine the current professional elected in that position determining what should or shouldn't go in or happening. They create a moat for themselves and others.
Hmm.
You know, uh, I believe the charter committee, the recommendation they made to the council on the changes to the treasurer's position, the opponent that the current city treasurer had would not have qualified. Um, so I just want to be really careful with, if we're going to have these things, you keep it open as broad as possible and bring us into consistency with other cities as to what's happening. City Redondo has been an oddball city for a while on some of these things. So,
It has the
all right.
most unusual charter in the state.
It is, yep.
A
And
six member council with 5+1. No one else has that. We're
yep,
only 8 now elected city attorneys in the state. There used to be 10. San Bernardino got rid of theirs, and just this past election, Compton got rid of theirs.
yep,
Um, and so the 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 election that's been an issue for me forever. So as Steve well knows, going back to my ancient days on this, it is something really problematic, and ultimately sometime we'll put it up to the voters. It couldn't be put on this ballot according to what we learned regarding the change of status um, of a position once the papers have been filed. So they could not be put on this ballot. It could be put on 2 years from
right. So those covers those professional positions, those two professional positions. It's really important that the duties get changed. It's not vital that the qualifications get changed, or get voted on and voted on and changed. And the last thing I'll deal with on the qualifications portion is anyone can turn in paperwork to run for these positions, whether they qualify or not. It's only up to the opponent to verify or
now.
the general public to verify that they actually have the qualified uh, uh, requirements. So if
Mhm.
no one challenges this person, or there's no challenger and no one challenges that person because there's no challenger, I mean, or the qualifications, then somebody who's technically speaking unqualified could run and win. So the city clerk cannot determine whether somebody is qualified or not. All they do is just take the paperwork in and stamp it as complete or incomplete and move on.
In fact, that was
Jerry
the case
Goddard
when,
is an example of that.
yeah, and when Eleanor first ran, she had 4 opponents, but no one ever knew exactly whether any of them had the 15 units of accounting requirements that are now in the charter. So uh, who vets them is really important. So if we leave it to the opponents to vet them, uh, that isn't always the simplest thing to do.
Yep, and then it looks bad for the opponent. I mean, the opponent is challenging their rival, right? Then it's like, oh hey, you're just a jerk for challenging your opponent. When in
Mhm,
fact, it's probably it could very well be a legitimate issue, right?
mhm.
It's again, this should goes back to the voter should decide what the qualifications should be, and I'm a big advocate of that. Nancy, you wrote regarding the city attorneys. Uh, the council approved an elected incoming prosecutor. So the just so everyone knows, on the city attorney, city prosecutor, the city attorney was actually considered part-time up until the 80s and was able to have a their own law firm. And up until the 80s, then it changed as per charter amendment to make it a permanent position, at which point in time the city attorney could not do um, uh, have their own law firm. In the set up until the 70s, we actually had our elected judge, and that went away as well. So, anyways, then we had was late 80s, mid to late 80s when you had the charter change, when made the city attorney a full-time position, and a city attorney is in charge of the prosecution and civil side. So, it's been like that since it's. I mean, it's kind of newish in a way. Uh, Newer on the newer side compared to our charter, which has been around since 1949. And quick tidbit of history: the reason why we have all these elected positions, we're supposed to have an elected city manager as well, because City Redondo had during the Roaring 20s and stuff, we had all the casino and drinking going
Gambling
off
beds.
in the Santa Monica Bay. And so they thought, well, if we just make all these elected positions, there won't be any corruption. So we
There
all know.
was a charter in the 30s. There was a charter in the 30s when those things got codified, and they got
Yes.
when they reissued the charter in 1949. That's where it happened.
There you go.
but it came from before.
Nils,
So, Gene?
can I ask you a question? Because you said something before that I don't understand. You said the city clerk does not qualify anyone, but
Right.
I'm
Yes.
on Facebook. I just qualified for this election. I qualified. The city clerk qualified me. So, uh,
Great, great question. So qualification. Uh, so in order to technically qualify, so I qualified for mayor, to run for mayor, means I turned in paperwork with 20 valid signatures, which allows
Right.
me to go onto the ballot. That's considered qualification.
okay.
uh and I'm a registered voter for 30 days. The city clerk verified that, and I am living at my current domicile in Redondo Beach. So those are all verified things that the city clerk has to check to make you qualified. Now, when it comes to the professional position, to say the requirements, like the city attorney, for instance, you have 5 years of minimum bar service, member of the bar. That's, I believe, the only real qualification.
And
Uh,
live in the city.
that live in the city, right? But in
By the
terms
way,
of
the
the
mayor doesn't have to live in the city after he gets elected.
right. So when it comes to the 5 years of uh, good standing in the bar, or being in the bar for 5 consistent years, the city clerk doesn't check that. So these
Mhm.
new qualifications, or if somebody ran for city clerk, the city clerk would not check to make sure that there is 15 units of government accounting. And so when we
There's no
add,
vetting.
Really?
there's no vetting.
There's no vetting.
Nope. So when we add all these qualifications to run, the city clerk will not verify or vet those qualifications.
Do they verify if someone running for a district position actually lives in that district?
Yes.
Okay, so they only verify it through the voter rolls. They don't actually go
Right.
out to the individual's
Domicile.
domicile.
Oh my God. That's the stuff it seems like they should be doing instead of this 15 years of
Of
account.
course.
Yeah.
Uh,
Of course.
okay. Um,
So, all right, going on to the next charter amendment, we have CAP. What does CAP stand for? Charter Amendment
Publishing.
Publishing. All these have a theme, by the way. CTD is Charter Treasurer Duties. CTQ is Charter Treasurer Qualifications. CCD Charter Clerk Duties. CCQ, which is Charter Clerk Qualifications. Now we have CAP, Charter Amendment Publishing. Charter Amendment Publishing is really simple. Right now, our city charter says we have to publish onto a single newspaper. Uh, we have to publish for what is it? Contracts, for public hearings,
Bids.
for let's see, legal notices and budgets. Those all have to be put in the Easy Reader. We use the Easy Reader. It's in the very back section. Most people, I can guarantee you, have never even seen it, or if they see it, they don't know what it was or is. And so we're getting rid of that, and we're saying we can publish it on our website or another website that we own, and we will post it in 3 physical locations in the city. Right now, we only publish it or post it in 1 physical location. What will that do? Why are we voting on this? It makes things more efficient, makes things cheaper, makes things more available to the general public. Who opens up a paper newspaper that doesn't even get delivered to every single household, or delivered promptly on time to the newspaper boxes, and then goes to the back of the newspaper and look in a little section and read in little 8-point, 10-point font what it says in there, what it means? Now we can go
The
online, have it all online. You can check on our website.
the issue with this was that we do this now and it's relatively inexpensive. If you're required to do this in the future when local newspapers have gone away, your only option may very well be the Los Angeles Times. And if you were to spend that much money, you are basically wasting 99% of it because none of them live in the city. So the issue is looking forward. And sadly, we're losing newspapers. And we need to have in the charter the ability in the future to be able to go another direction. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be done immediately, but it leaves open the opportunity so for when this happens, and it will happen, that there is an option available. If you look at even the Daily Breeze, it is a much smaller, and the circulation of the Daily Breeze has declined something like 80% in the last 10 years. And it only is owned by this LA News Group, which is basically just milking it for whatever revenue they can get.
Yep. So that's the basic, simple charter amendment for publishing. I really hope it passes. I really hope everyone votes yes on that. It's going to help us go more paperless, be more efficient, and be forward thinking. That I don't even think actually, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that even came as a recommendation from the Charter Commission. You guys didn't have an official vote. You guys talked about it, but there was no official vote on that. Is that correct?
No, we forwarded to,
Oh, you did?
we did approve it. Yeah, we
Okay.
forwarded to you that.
Okay. So that leaves us with our final one, and that is the Charter Amendment CAR, Charter Amendment Residency. CAR. And I am not going to vote on yes on this, and it's very simple why it's going to open us up to a tremendous amount of legal issues and potential legal issues, frivolous lawsuits, confusion, and most importantly, we're going to be out of sync with the state of California, what's going on. So what is Charter Amendment Residency? Right now, this came to this council from the Charter Commission as Ms. Bob pointed out. The mayor, once elected, there's nothing that says in there they have to remain a resident of Redondo Beach. They can literally go take off and live in another state, in another country, go live in Australia, wherever they wanted to. Never be heard from again. And the city council has no ability to remove that person. Kind of like the city treasurer over in Torrance. They had no ability to they had the same problem over there. Person just kind of called in sick and said, "I'm not showing up." The other professional position or other positions, professional ones, attorney, clerk, treasurer, as well as counsel, all have the requirement that they shall remain residents in the city. It's not in there for the mayor. I think it's just a complete oversight.
Mhm.
And we're putting that in there. I agree with that 100%. The problem for me lies in the next portion, which is because we had a council member that moved to the city of Torrance in May of 2020, bought a house, moved to the city of Torrance. The city attorney said it was okay because there's no definition of residency in the city of Redondo's Beach's charter. And I'll just say this. Little old Redondo Beach is in no way and not ever going to define the term residency or domicile or think what we would be able to figure out or be the only ones that ever had this problem. And so in the state of California, there is a 16-point, 15-point test, an exact definition, and it gets tested through the court system through the years, will be coming up and always happening. It's an ever evolving document and test. And by us putting any type of definition into the city charter, the only way for us to change it is another vote of the people, or we just by fiat, like we've done, and violate our own city charter and do something else. But most importantly, we defined what a domicile residency is, a house where somebody lives. But what we didn't do is classify how we attach that person to that particular location. And the city attorney, out of this 15, 16-point test, picked and chose about 2 or 3 different sections and said, this is what we should use. And I looked at it and says, you can't just take 2 or 3 of these out of the total 15. That creates confusion. It creates an issue in imbalance. So I voted no on that, not because I didn't want the voters to decide, but because this will cause us problems in the future if we do this change, and that change uh, will put us out of sync and at odds with state law. We can run our own elections in Redondo and do a lot of things with our elections in Redondo. For instance, Huntington Beach just uh, was successful in creating a voter ID law. So when you vote in Huntington Beach, you have to have a voter ID card. City of Santa Ana has I believe it got through. They said they will allow non-legal residents
No,
to
that
vote in
failed.
their what?
It failed.
Oh, it failed. Okay. They wanted to do that, and then City of Culver City, had it on their charter amendment to allow 16-year-olds to vote. So these are all things charter cities can do, but we cannot redefine what the definition of residency and domicile is. We just can't. It's a matter of statewide concern. It affects too much. Um, so, anyways, I got in a long discussion with a lot of people on this, a lot of city attorneys outside of the city of Redondo Beach, I'll just say, and the answer was always the same. It's well tested through the court system, and Little Old Redondo Beach is not going to define anything. So that's going to be on the ballot. I'll be voting no on that. I'll be telling people to vote no on that. I think it's going to cause more problems. I do believe we should have in there regarding the residency requirement for the mayor. 100% agree with that. That was an oversight, I think. But the other thing is going to add bigger problems than create more problems, I should say, than uh, than solve problems.
The one thing we could never figure out on the Charter Review Committee, since almost every line of this charter has a story to it, why that mayor thing never happened in all these years. We could never figure out why that happened.
You know,
But there must be a story somewhere.
it's a great point, Bob, and I think nobody ever looked at it because the way I read the charter, reading the charter like a story, and I am reading it like understanding what when they put it together, back in 1949, and what they were trying to accomplish is what I see is this: city council members being required to live in their districts. They have to show up to at least 2 meetings a month. If they don't, they can be considered the position could be considered vacant. So that forces the council
Mhm.
members to live and attend the meetings and make decisions. There's no alternate for the city council members. They have to be there. And if things, uh, I'll just end off with that. So when it comes to the mayor's position, the mayor looks out for the whole city as a whole and defends against the outside forces and defends against the state and goes to the feds or the state and gets resources and grants and acts as the ambassador to the rest of the world, so to speak. City council members stay in their districts, they represent their districts, they vote citywide, and then the mayor comes in and says, you know what? I was just out in Sacramento or in Washington, D.C. I got grant funding. I was defending our city. I was getting ourselves some resources. And I saw that you guys had this 3-2 vote, and it was all to succor one part of the city, or I feel is in imbalance for the whole city. And so I'm going to veto this decision. And that ability to veto is very powerful. And then the second part to that is this: there's no requirement for the mayor to be attend all the meetings. There's no need to because there's a mayor pro tem, and that changes every year. And the mayor pro tem can take over for the mayor when the mayor is not available. So when I look at it from that perspective, it makes sense that the mayor can go out and represent, do what they need to do outside the city bounds, come back with the fruits of their labor, report back to the city, and correct anything if things gone awry. That's kind of how I see the charter being written, and them forgetting to put in there or accidentally not requiring it. That's what they're that's kind of what the how the go round is. So there's a question here. What about when council meetings are virtual? Wouldn't that fulfill their meeting intention? That does a council member can attend a meeting or mayor via a virtual method. So we changed that via ordinance, and that is allowing us via ordinance. The state of California is allowing that now. It can't be more than
I think twice.
two.
Yeah,
What?
twice, I think.
2 times per year?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, 2 times per year, and then more than 2 council members. So a couple council members have used it a few times. It's very helpful. It's very beneficial, and that's a good thing that came out of the pandemic, the ability to do that. So the mayor can also appear remotely as well.
You have to announce it and you have to post it
Yep. Not online, but to post it on the door of wherever you're at. And
wherever you're at. Yeah.
be kind of public. So it's a fascinating read, our city charter. A lot of changes through the years. I really hope these changes move forward. Any other questions from anyone else on any of this stuff? We go on Facebook. Let's see here. Too many tabs open. All right, so the next thing up is general plan update. Progress. EIR is done. So going back to earlier statements that I talked about regarding the measure DD change, the charter change we had back in November. Thank you very much for voting yes on that. In November, we finalized the environmental impact report for the new zoning change on the commercial side and the housing side, but mostly just the commercial. We also did a little extra update for the Beach Cities Health District, and that's a 1 they want a 1.25 FAR on their particular location. And we did an addendum to our environmental impact report, and we studied what a 1.25 would look like in terms of impacts to the city of Redondo Beach. That was certified on the first meeting in December. And I think, Bob, you made a great comment, which should change my mind on it, and I asked the question, which is, do we have to certify this now? City staff came through and says, no, you don't have to certify this now. And the reason I'm going over this with you and talking about why we need a certification or not is because we will be setting the floor area ratios and other commercial aspects on Artesia Boulevard, other parts of the city in January, February timeframe, probably a February timeframe, the way I look at it. And that will be done to set a zoning standard. Floor area ratio, FAR, real simple. It's an acronym so that if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, if you have a 1.0 FAR, you can build 10,000 square feet of development on there, which does not include the parking. If you have a 0.5 FAR, you can build 5,000 square feet. If you have a 1.5 FAR, you can build 15,000 square feet. It does not include the parking and the setback zones. Yeah, so that after that gets implemented in January, February, let's just say, that will require a vote of the people. We can either do a special election later next year or have it come back in 2026 with another election, or we can wait until 2027 to do an election. So those will not go into effect until we have a vote.
If I could interrupt here for a second to take you back to the charter amendment about publishing. When the general plan is voted on, literally you have to send the general plan physically to every voter.
So,
however, if you send them a QR code,
yep.
You save yourself an awful lot of money and paper.
Yep. And that is because of Measure DD, the change that we just had actually in November, included a little snippet in there that says instead of shall be mailed to be made available, which also then helps the process. So now we no longer have to, like you said, mail it or print copies. We can print a few copies, put it at the city clerk's office, City Hall. We can put it on our website. We can email it around, put it as a PDF. So these are all big updates, saving us time, money, and effort. So that's the general plan update. That's where we are on track with that. Yes, BCHD was there. It will impact BCHD and what they're possibly doing in the future. It all depends. Right now, they're under the old rules. And if they put an application in today, tomorrow, next week, January, February, March, they're under the old rules. So anyone that's following that project or concerned about that project, they have a lot of time to do whatever they need to do, and we'll find out what they'll do. I'd like to actually sit down with them and talk with them and see what's going on. All right. Next
Oh,
up,
Nils,
yes,
I've got a question about BCHD.
yeah, fire away.
I saw in the Easy Reader, I think last week, that there was an application for approval of the Shakespeare by the Sea business over at one of the buildings that's part of the campus there at on Prospect. I think it was going to be in the 514 North Prospect building. And I thought, how is it possible that Shakespeare by the Sea is operating, on that campus um, without, any kind of a permit there? I mean, do you know? I think there's a hearing coming up either before the council or the planning commission.
I'll take the first swipe at it, and I'll let Wayne Craig. You have your hand up. You can talk about that. So the first thing I'll say to that is, how can a district or a jurisdiction, public jurisdiction, public district, do something that's out of compliance with what they're allowed to do? Well, guess what? The city of Redondo Beach has been in violation of our city charter, changed actions by the city treasurer and city clerk's office by fiat in 2005. The city attorney did nothing about it since then. And it says in our city charter that the city attorney shall prosecute violations of the city charter. You know what? If the city attorney doesn't do it, if the city doesn't enforce it, then it's up to the residents to file a lawsuit, file a complaint, or file a complaint somehow. So that answers that. When it comes to the question of how can Shakespeare by the Sea operate in BCHD territory out of compliance, I don't know, because I don't know what is in compliance or out of compliance. I don't know what the approved uses are or unapproved uses are. But we do have a planning commissioner here. Luckily for us, we've got Wayne Craig, who put his hand up, who's on the planning commission, and I believe hearing about this tomorrow. So Wayne Craig, go ahead and fill us in.
Yeah, first of all, Shakespeare by the Sea is not currently operating in the effect of they don't have a theater operating. They don't have any stage or anything. That's what the actual permit or the CUP that we're reviewing tomorrow is actually all about. It's located in the 514 building, it was mentioned earlier, which is, if you've been in there, it's in the parking lot in the back. You have to drive through it. It's about an 8,000 square foot footprint, and they're developing about 3,000 square foot of it, mostly offices, but also a stage area. From what we've seen, none of that's been built yet, but they do have offices in the main office medical building on the same floor that the Chamber of Commerce has offices, which also, to answer the question from Mr. Colin, that is also not in the accepted use of the current operations of BCHD. It says medical office suites, and the Chamber of Commerce is not a medical office suite. And they've been there for over a year, I think, at this point. Anyway, getting back to the point of this, the thing, we received a letter at the Planning Commission from some residents. Actually, an attorney who lives in Torrance stated that the proposed use would be in violation, and we received that back in July. So I was just reviewing the Planning Commission meeting. I actually asked the planning director, Mr. Scully, at the time, is this something we're going to be seeing and hearing, or has it already been approved by the planning department? And they responded back at that point, no, it will be coming back in the fall. That's why it's on the agenda now. So we're going to be hearing everything about this tomorrow. I've reviewed the paperwork. There's a bunch of stuff on it, but it's essentially some of it's for like stage offices and such. They have the stage area is like a 300-foot wide stage, about 6 inches off the ground. They're doing a bunch of different things with it. Again, their interpretation, at least staff, is that it applies to that. Again, we're going to review that. I would encourage anyone in the public to come and speak on it if you have questions or concerns, because as we've seen in the past, the city does selectively enforce things, and I think this is something that perhaps there's some good questions to be raised on this to see what's going on with it. Beyond that, I can't really talk more about it because we're going to start discussion on it tomorrow.
Steve, regarding the zoning under the present, which is PCF zoning, and even the future one, PI, a theater would be an acceptable conditional use. And it's been exacerbated by the fact that the district has declared, I believe, the entire property exempt surplus. So that may very well change because, as I understand it, if a public agency determines that something is surplus, first dibs goes to residential. That's how I understand it. I may be wrong about that.
Okay, yes and no. You are correct. It's actually one step further. So you're correct in the sense that what you have to deem it surplus, but in order to get to the residential status, you have to go to not dissolution, vacation or selling of the property. You have to sell the property. And when you sell the property, first dibs is residential. I take it back. First is other public agencies, and then it's residential uses. So
Okay.
it's
But
yeah.
but
So
the issue of the issue of the theater is actually from what I gather, listed as an accepted potential conditional use. Now, the offices may not be, and the offices certainly of the Chamber of Commerce are not. So maybe this is a serial scofflaw, that organization that we have, but it's pretty complicated. It's complicated, at least for me.
yeah.
Maybe not for you.
Yeah, I don't want to go down too far on this path. It is very complicated. I don't know. The BCHD is a completely separate district in Redondo Beach, just like the school district is. But they both have to come to us for construction permits and conditional use permits for certain actions. So I do notice on your agenda for planning commission tomorrow night, I do notice that you have on the agenda a conditional use permit for the Legato property for a workout studio. So any of you living in District 1 here, conditional use permit for 1700 South PCH, which is the Legato property for what is this? A workout studio. So personal improvement service fitness studio with existing construction, 2,600 square feet. So let's see here. And then you actually have another one in North Redondo in North PCH for
Right.
a massage studio. Just so everyone knows, there's more massage studios on PCH per square mile than there are anywhere else in the city of Redondo Beach. Fact, actually. And then you have another
You've taken that away from Artesia.
That we know about.
that you know about. Yeah. Yeah. Artesia no longer is number one in that.
That's right.
Hasn't been for a long time. So anyways, we're getting off topic. Back on topic here. Let's see here. EIR, any other questions on the EIR or general plan or any of that stuff? All right. Seeing none. Bike lanes, PV Boulevard. We had a discussion this last week ago about bike lanes on PV Boulevard 2 weeks ago. First meeting in December. There's a new state law that came through and said we can no longer put bike lanes. A bike lane is considered a sharrow, which is just kind of a marked bike lane, but not protected bike lane on a street that has 35 miles an hour or more, or 30 miles an hour or more, and PV Boulevard in that one section. Staff said it was 35 miles an hour, and I just drove by there just the other day, and it was 30 miles an hour. So, regardless, I prevented them from taking that out because we can build in a protected bike lane on PV Boulevard. I'm proud to say that when I got into office in is a less than 5%, I want to say, of bike lanes of the South Bay Bicycle Master Plan, the Redondo Beach Bicycle Master Plan, less than 5%. And now I'm leaving here in 2025. We'll have 85% of the Redondo Beach Bicycle Master Plan either built or in design, but designed and funded or built. In fact, a large portion of it on Redondo Beach on King Nob Hill is being finished up. Multi-million-dollar project we got with grants. Torrance just got new bike lanes. It's gorgeous. Manhattan Beach Boulevard getting bike lanes. And Catalina, we're doing some resurfacing there that's going to get some updated bike lanes. So I want to keep those bike lanes as much as possible throughout the city and build them out because we are a beach town. It's a great way to travel, and we have all these electric bikes. We need to provide the infrastructure for these bikes moving forward. So it's really important. The BV bike lanes, they will be a separate discussion of public works because there's some traffic and truck issues, speeding issues, loud vehicle issues and truck issues on PV Boulevard and Prospect, trucks coming in from Torrance and just using it. It's not a truck route. They've been using PV Boulevard as a truck route illegally for years. And it's we're dealing with it. It's a lot of issues there. And on Prospect as well. Prospect is important because Prospect, we have Toledo Elementary, and way down the line, we have, actually, no, it's a little bit down the line, we have the other elementary school, Alta Vista, and then way down the line, you have Barrel and then the high school. So Prospect is a very important street to not have these big trucks bumbling down them. Speaking of streets, Manhattan Beach Boulevard is just about done on resurfacing. If you have drive up there, it's been a long time in the works. We've done a lot of work up there in North Redondo on Manhattan Beach Boulevard, complete resurfacing and new curbs on Inglewood and Manhattan Beach Boulevard. It's done a phenomenal work, getting in bike lanes, resurfacing, repainting, restriping, a lot of work up there. So that's finishing up here in the next few weeks. Torrance Boulevard is gorgeous. I need to get some pictures on that and show that. They did a great job. They have on Torrance Boulevard bike lanes that are painted green, very clear markings. And then when you get to the crosswalks, they painted it all black. And then they put the white cross marks on top so you really can differentiate. And then they really did a great job using quality striping product, paint product, glass, I believe it is, paint that is really highly reflective. They did a fantastic job there. Really want to give a lot of props to Public Works and the contractors that worked on that. And then Catalina is being resurfaced right now when I say actually slurry sealed, I should say, not resurfaced. Slurry seal is a kind of coating they put on there. And then they'll be putting in a proper bike lane there as well. Cheryl, so it's actually just painted onto the ground, not protected, but painted onto the ground. And a lot of money being spent these last couple of years on street resurfacing and painting. Let's see here. Any questions and comments on that? All that money, by the way, all that was paid for through, most of it was through state funds, SB1 funds, Measure M funds from the LA County. The slurry seal, I believe, was done out of our own funds. That was money that we saved, used by the savings of our $100 million bond, $200 million bond that we issued to pay off our pension debt. So with those savings, we are doing a lot of these infrastructure upgrades within the city. So this is purely because we did some really smart things, 2.82% interest rate that we're being charged. So in this interest rate environment, we're saving ourselves well over $100 million over the next 30 years. Nancy, the street I was talking about is Torrance Boulevard, and then it's going to connect with Catalina. Catalina is being redone right now as well. So on the avenues, section of the avenues there. All right. Travel and tourism update. So our hotels are doing well. Many years ago, in 2017, there was a contract for a travel and tourism district that was a part of the Chamber of Commerce. And it was a district, it was kind of like club, separate action, part of the Chamber of Commerce, and they were straight getting 10% of our TOT bed tax, and they didn't have to produce a single result or a single report, nothing out of it. So when I came in 2017, I want to give props to our current city treasurer, Eugene Solomon. He's the one who found this contract and found the siphoning off. We killed that contract, saving ourselves over $850,000 a year, and came back with an update, which I thought was an excellent update and a great compromise on a lot of the stuff. That we added an extra percentage point to our hotel bed tax. It's our current bed tax is 12%, and this would be in addition to that, so it brings it 13%. That 1% of revenue generates roughly $800,000-$900,000 of revenue for this travel and tourism district, and they spend 90% of it as per the district that we set up for them on actually advertising the city. We have websites set up. People click on these websites. They send out advertisements and mailers and online advertising. And it has done phenomenal benefits for the city of Redondo Beach by getting our name out there, our likeness out there. People are coming to Redondo Beach. We see working with Beach Life and other events. It's been very successful, and we can track all of this online. And so we know what our return on investment is, and we're doing very well. I should actually post the slides of that presentation, and I'll end off with this. There's the hotels on Marine Avenue, on the 405 there, Marine Avenue 405 at the end of the current Sea Line or Old Green Line. Those 2 or 3 hotels that are up there, there was a deal made in 2012 to build those. And part of that deal was financing through the hotel bed tax, TOT tax. And they have to have a reserve, currently set at $8 million. They could tap into that reserve if they have a bad year or something goes awry. In this case, that happened during the pandemic. They tapped those funds, brought it all the way down to a couple $100,000, maybe $1 million or $2 left in that funds. They redid the hotels there as well. And so even though our bookings are back to the pre-pandemic levels, as well as our rates per rooms, we are not seeing the revenue from those hotels. That's roughly $3 million a year, $2 to $3 million a year. That savings account has being built up. It should be built up here in the next 8 months to a year, and then we'll be seeing revenue from that again to our general fund. So that is something that's very positive for the city. The tourism district are doing great work. They're reporting to us on the report every single year. They have some great ads. Barbara, I see your comment in there. You're absolutely right. And they have fantastic ads. I mean, it's just, they have a great logo, great designs. And they hire a company, a local company to track this and do this. And like I said, 90% of their revenue should be or is spent on ad revenues. They do have some savings and carryovers, which they do year for following year. And yes, they are gearing up for the World Cup, and they are gearing up for the Olympics to get us all ready to go on that. So yeah, that's our hotel. Legato project is coming online as well. The Legato project on the corner of PCH and PV Boulevard is nearing completion. They'll probably be done. They say the first quarter of 2025. They're a few months behind, as one would expect. There's a hotel on site, which is roughly 110 rooms, I believe it is, 110 rooms. And they have completely redone the entire area and have a rooftop dining, a pool, a bar, all that good stuff on the very top level of that old hotel. The hotel is an old hotel built in the 1950s, 1960s, right in there, all made of concrete. It's like a bunker, and has fantastic views of the lower South Bay PV area. And when that place opens up, that hotel, they have an operator ready to go for that. It's going to provide awesome revenue for both the city and the owner of that place. They'll sell out for sure in that location. There's 115 apartments being built right next door to that large mixed-use project. So that's all great work for great news for the city and our coffers coming up. And let's see here. Hotel rates up, the TUTA taxes up. Let's see, homeless update. All right, homeless update. Always a fun and topic to talk about, or not so fun. We have achieved something called functional zero in Redondo Beach. What does that mean? That means the amount of people that we have helped to get off the street is now equal at the amount of people that have been homeless from Redondo Beach. So our numbers were at 225 in 2019, right in there, 2019, 2020, 245, right in there. We're now down about 70 something, between 70 and 80 homeless people on the streets. And in fact, it's lower now. And the people that are left, so to speak, on the streets are either people who A, don't want help, or B, aren't from Redondo Beach. And we've effectively helped everyone that had a connection to Redondo Beach. And that's defined as going to high school here in Redondo, living here for more than a year, or having relatives here in Redondo Beach. And by getting this, we've done that through a multitude of ways. We're a pallet shelter program, through Project Moonstone here in Redondo, South Redondo, which I'll get to for an update on that in a second, as well as hiring out apartments outside of Redondo Beach for money that has been available. It's kind of funny that we had an event in Redondo that says we were the first one in LA County, because I was at that achieved this success. I was at an event last week, 2 weeks ago, Janice Hahn's swearing in ceremony, and they were all happy with Signal Hill. And Signal Hill they lauded Signal Hill as the first city in LA County to have uh, to be functional zero. So once again, it's one of those things. Everyone wants to claim the first thing about functional zero, and people saying things in different avenues and different areas. But regardless, it's a great thing to have Signal Hill, Redondo Beach at this functional zero level. It's a huge achievement, huge win for us moving forward. And this is mostly being done with grant monies from outside of Redondo Beach, mostly Measure H funds from the county. We are spending between $500,000 to $1 million a year in our general funds, because we are hiring a housing coordinator, 2 housing coordinators. We have a budgeted position for a mental health clinician, which I don't agree with. We don't need to be doing that. And then as well as some other services that we're doing, paying for out of pocket. And all of this right now is being run in the city attorney's office, which I don't agree with at all. Especially since we have a mental health clinician that we have funded for that. The reason why I don't agree with it is very simple. Our city attorney does prosecutions for misdemeanors. When things go awry for a misdemeanor, uh, who who puts forward the charges and makes sure that the person is prosecuted? Our city attorney's office. So if our city attorney has access or sees access to the mental health and the health records of an individual who now has uh, charges against them, that to me is a huge conflict of interest. So running all of this in the state attorney's office, who's in charge of prosecution, to me is a huge issue. Also, the last thing I'll end off with this is we do not need to be spending on lawyers for $200 an hour in the city attorney's office to be doing an administrative program. They should all be offloaded to the civilian, non-legal world. I should say civilian, the non-legal attorneys world. We can put that into community services, which does belong in community services, and having those individuals in the community services, because this is a community service, for half the price. So we can hire twice as many people for the same price, or do the same work for half the price. And I will start talking now about Project Moonstone. If we open up Project Moonstone in South Redondo here in Nob Hill and PCH. And very simply put, there's been some issues here in Project Moonstone. There was an individual who was wielding a knife, and the police department was called. In my opinion, the police department showed up with overwhelming force that didn't need to be as forceful as they did. There was a video of it online, guns drawn, and they brought the person into custody. They arrested the person. The person is being charged, and the person will not be back to the Project Moonstone location. So that is both a good and bad thing. You know, it's a double-edged sword. We're trying to help people off the street and get people moving forward in their life. And when something like this happens, what do you do? How do you deal with it? So the person's not going back to the Project Moonstone location. Got an update from the police chief on that, and will be charged with at least one or two crimes. And yeah, so there's been some other updates as well. The bike incident, person's not being charged for that, but people are on notice. So any questions on it? Let me go to the questions here. An audit for cost per person, why the city still, so I don't know why the city attorney still runs the program. He doesn't want to give it up. He wants to take full credit for that. I'll tell you right now, in the city attorney's race, that should be an issue. Personally, that should be an issue because it's not in city charter. The purview of homelessness is not in the city charter for the city attorney. The city attorney needs to be dealing with city attorney business. He complains about, and rightfully so, about a large workload. Got a lot to do. Guess what? The entire city has a lot to do. So why should we be adding more to the city attorney's office?
Right.
We should be removing it. Steve, you have a comment on that? You're
I do. Yeah.
candidate.
I started requesting documents from the city back in June and July regarding the homeless program and the pallet shelters and just documents in general about how it was operating out of the city attorney's office. And the documents have finally started to trickle in as of November, and I'm still being told that I'm not going to get some of the documents until January. And I just think that that's ridiculous. But from what I've been able to read so far, it's just, I just don't think that it's appropriate for the homeless program and the pallet shelter work to be handled out of the city attorney's office. The lawyers aren't trained, for that kind of work. What I have heard so far is that there is a plan to move it out of the city attorney's office when Mike Webb is gone, and to move it over into the community services department, which I think is the more appropriate place for the program to be administered. Okay. The other thing that I saw in reading just memos that have gone back and forth between Joy Ford and some of the people in Hermosa Beach and Manhattan Beach and some of these agencies, they talk about some of the things that they are going to be doing for these people who are claiming that they are homeless. And if you get into the system, if you get arrested, it seems as if all you have to do is say, I'm homeless, and then immediately you're taken over to the pallet shelter, and you get processed through the system. And there doesn't appear to be a system where anybody is doing a check on the criminal background of these people. And it's been shocking to just randomly go through the names of some of these people and to see that some of them have criminal histories that started back in 2014, and they've gone up through July and August and September of this year.
Yeah, let me interrupt you there just for a second. You said a lot there. So
Yeah.
I've heard about this plan as well to move these homeless services over to community services. I've been fighting for this for years,
Yeah.
but I've been effectively shut down. In fact, one of the things that I was shut down on a couple of years ago was because the city attorney stopped doing work that they were supposed to be doing, and the city manager made a deal with the city attorney in 2023, I believe it was. And the deal was we won't put the charter amendment onto the ballot, the city attorney's office, and the city charter committee stopped snooping around for the city attorney's office and asking for what you just asked for, all these documents regarding budgets and information. And then magically things started working again. Now today to hear and through multiple different avenues to hear that the homeless services are being moved out of the city attorney's office. It's great to hear these rumors, but I see nothing in concrete evidence. It's not on our strategic plan. It is not anywhere written or being said at a city council meeting anywhere else.
Right.
So, and the other thing is I want to talk to real quick regarding the criminal history for people. I'll just tell you, Steve, that no person is perfect. A lot of the reasons why people are homeless is because they have a past. It's hard for people to get a job, employment, education, get off their feet. They got to start somewhere. And we do have homeless court to clean up that past prior history. Now, I'm not talking about things, part one crimes, which are major crimes like murder and those types of things. I'm talking about a whole list of other issues along the way. Regardless, this, somebody's past history doesn't mean we shouldn't be able to help people move them forward and get them housing and do something. And just so you know, to correct one thing that you said here was if there is a room in the pallet shelter program, we will find someone and fill that. I don't believe there's any room available. So there's a question in the chat real quick. I'll let you go on, Steve. There is the step here is to get people off the street into the pallet shelters, get them stabilized, meaning get them paperwork, get them information, forms of income. We take for granted driver's license, basic paperwork. People who are homeless don't have any of that. That all has to be taken care of, and then we put them in a place that has permanent support, that has temporary, permanent, or long-term supportive housing, such as Project Moonstone. And the goal there is to further stabilize, get the person with job or job training, education, make them self-sufficient, and then move them out of that. Every step can take multiple months. Pallet shelter can take, a couple months, 6 months, 8 months, a year if they can find housing somewhere else. Project Moonstone, 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2, 3 years. The goal is to eventually move them out of that location into a private residence so they're no longer there. So, Steve, you want to continue on?
Okay. So I get that. I get that. And I don't think that anybody wants to see the pallet shelter or the homeless program go away. I just think that it's not appropriate for it to be handled out of the city attorney's office. You're paying lawyers in there $300,000 a year with benefits and salary. And we've got a city attorney who's paying outside legal counsel, 3 million, 2 million, $2 million in outside fees. That's what those lawyers in there should be working on, those cases, so that we minimize the amount of money being spent on outside firms. So that's the goal that I have there. So I'm looking forward to seeing the program shift over to the community services department or somewhere else parked in the city. That's a goal of mine after that election, not to get rid of it, but to just shift it into a more appropriate department and let people who are trained in that area, deal with
Got
that.
it. Okay. Thank you, Steve. Sheila, your hand is raised, and I will say, Gil, to your question on audit, it must be an audit to determine the actual cost for each homeless person, the services. I fully agree with you on that one. We should be auditing what the cost is, how we do things more efficient. We're just adding more and more services and staffing. I voted against adding a mental health clinician to the city attorney's office. Again, it should be in their community services. And there's other things we could do. So, Sheila, your hand is raised and you have a question or a comment.
Yes, I do have a question, and it relates to something that you said um, 5, 10 minutes ago. And that was about the response to the uh, homeless individual that had the knife. And I believe you referenced that it was at Project Moonstone. Um, the question I have is about uh, you're mentioning police over response. Am I correct? Is that what I heard?
Yeah,
And
so there was a
and
video. There was a video online on Nextdoor, and it had one, two, three, four officers, I believe, that responded. This is just my position. I'm not an officer, and I know the chief of police feels differently about it. I spoke to him about it. But they responded with guns drawn, and one had an AR-15, which is a rifle
right,
type of rifle. And the problem for me is when you have at 9 o'clock at night, 8:30, 8 o'clock at night, you have four cop cars showing up, blazing lights and sirens. You have speakers, you have people with their guns drawn. It sets a situation for the outsiders looking in that's like, whoa, what's going on here? The residents are living there. Well, wait a sec, what's going on here? There are other ways to de-escalate the situation. I know LAPD has worked on that a lot for de-escalation. I'm a big fan of de-escalation. Um,
right.
I will
So
be firm and just will say this one last thing is every officer, person has a right to go home safely, and finding that balance is where we need to go.
right. So my question. This is not the first time I've either observed or heard Redondo Beach police overreacting and over. Uh, we love the police. We want to be safe, right? They're a first
Agreed.
priority,
Yep.
right? But but there's a line here when we start hearing that the police are overreacting to situations, and then when I hear that the police want to have um, a super duper uh, uh, gun training, a 10 million, $12 million,
$17 million.
$17 million gun training program, right? Um, what it says to me is that the police department is very using their guns, and um, and I just wonder if that's appropriate for a small beach town like Redondo Beach. And so my question is there any effort at looking at the data for this overreaction, right?
So yeah, I mean it's a great question. I'm not sure what the data is there. Again, I will say the first thing I'm going to say here is every officer, every public safety official, every individual that works for us, either locally at a local level or even federal level, deserves to go home safely every single day. Period, bar none. Um, that's why there is this tension between how do we solve what is our perceived viewpoint of an overreaction versus their everyday skills, right? And what I do is I look at other cities and what do other cities do and what they train at and what they deal with. So um, when it comes to the data point with what needs to happen, and reviewing. That's up to the police department, really. You know, I'm a decision maker, policy maker. I'll just be very clear with this. At the end of the day, everything that happens in the city falls with my responsibility. Whether it's a public works official doing something, it's someone in community services, police department, city attorney's, well, city attorney's office, city attorney, I mean, even city attorney's office, you know, whatever they do, if an employee of the city does something, I, as a city council member, have to end up taking responsibility for that action, and that will result in, you know, a lawsuit, a payout, whatever. You know, and so it's a tough question to answer, Sheila, you know, in terms of specifics.
Right. How do we get to a place where we can actually have a conversation about this, a public conversation? Because it seems as though anytime you bring something up, right, it's there's a certain amount of defensive. What we want is a win-win,
Right.
right? We want balance, and if we can't have a conversation, I don't feel like we can have a conversation right now because of a
Right.
certain amount of defensiveness, and that's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good. How do we go forward? How, how do we get the right data, right?
Yep.
How do we get the
Well,
right data, and how do we have an intelligent conversation about where the middle way is?
right. So there was a comment here in the comments about reviewing the written use of force policy. Every call has a policy in terms of what level of service and what type of service or what resources show up to a type of call, right? Remember, when the officers show up, they don't know what is actually there. Caller may call in with some information. It could be wrong, it could be right, it could be completely made up, right? Or it could be completely on the side of like, whoa, they mentioned this, but it's way worse. So it's about training, and there's a comment in here, training and management's mindset. I think our police chief is doing a great job with changing our culture in Redondo Beach. It's also a long-term process. And to me, when I go to these educational events like ICA, Independent Cities Association, we have these conversations. They're difficult conversations to have, and I see what other cities are doing. And that to me is the most important thing, is because what other cities are doing, if it works, we can model after them and what they do. Jean, your hand is up.
Yeah. I put my hand up before Sheila started down this line, and I have a lot of things to say about what Sheila said. Um, I don't know if I really want to talk about that right now. Um, but a kitchen knife is not the same as a gun. Okay, someone with a knife is, it's not a deadly weapon to the extent a gun is. You can't, what's a person going to throw a knife at you? It's totally different. Our police have a history of overreaction. You stand on the street, and constantly on Nextdoor, I'm hearing things and seeing things. There's 20 cop cars flying down the street. People walking, people riding their bikes are in danger because of the complete overreaction by so many of the officers. What I really wanted, what I raised my hand about is, and this is a totally different subject. And I don't know.
You don't have to go down that path.
Yeah, no, you can wait. You can wait until you're done with this. But my question was about what was the deal today about there was some smell that evacuated the police department from the annex building?
Yeah.
What was
The
that?
toilet. The toilet overflowed.
You know, I
The
find
toilet
it
overflowed.
curious, funny that you asked that. We have having this conversation on today, like today. Yes, there was a LA County Fire Department was called to the police annex in Redondo Beach across the street for an odor, possibly hazardous smell. They evacuated the entire building, and they called in LA County Fire Department, hazmat, and they came in and they found out that it was a odor regarding the sewage system for a backed up pipe. So, I mean, it's you know, this is the police department on the police side. This was in, we can't sit here and talk about the full situation. I know it was dealing with the evidence and that area. I don't know what kind of chemicals they use there. If they are using chemicals, I don't know what kind of testing is going on there. If there are hazardous materials in the building, there could be, there maybe are. Always want to be better safe than sorry, right? But I do find it.
So that was an overreaction as well, I guess.
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, would you rather have an overreaction or an underreaction, right? And there's a comment
Well,
on here, sewer gas is hazardous. If you do, the reason why you have U traps is because hydrogen sulfide is, it can kill you. It's deadly.
Okay, well, we're talking about now two different things, but I'd rather have an underreaction if my life is in danger with police shooting at me. So
Yeah,
go.
I see what you're saying on that one. Yeah, I just, it's hindsight's always 2020, right, folks? I mean, that's what we have to be careful with always going on a path of. We can always chuckle after the fact if it's something funny, but if it's not, if it's a very serious situation with the use of force, if there is a use of force with shots fired, that brings in a whole nother category. And I know there's a comment in here with no shots fired. Yes, that wasn't the point of the comment here, Nicholas. It is there was an incident just the other day up in the North Redondo. Listen, when we deal with use of force, this is one thing I'm always very careful with. When I pass laws on the city council, I'm not passing frivolous laws. I want to make sure that it's a serious thing because we have to have our officers go out there and enforce it. We don't enforce laws on people that are following laws. We enforce the laws on people who are not following laws, right? So use of force, one thing I talked to our police chief about, and I want to kind of do want to move on, is unless somebody has some really pertinent comments, is that we should be using de-escalation and significant amount of training and virtual training with there's guns, that real guns or real fake guns, lifelike scenarios, computer-based training, computer-based modeling, reaction times. These are the types of things we need to go through over and over again. These types of actions, and listen, gun safety means gun handling, and shooting your weapon is a learned behavior and is a lost behavior. It is the reason why it's considered a sport. If you don't use your weapon, whether it's a baton, your mind doesn't have the same physical reaction. Same like in any sport. That's why tennis players play tennis, baseball players play tennis on a daily basis. They warm up, they get going. It's the same thing, mind reaction. So, moving on. Let's see here. We going back to project. It's so funny. We start off with homelessness and we ended up with that. So, I'll just end up with it's we are adding 25 pallet shelters to the pallet shelter program, or 25. So we should be getting 45 in total here in the next few months. Tuesday's council action. So last night we had a council meeting. Speaking of measure fire department and the annex and our buildings, what happened this morning on the annex was a perfect reason why we passed $93 million bond. It needs some work, as well as the police and fire stations do. So last night we had a conversation on how we're going to be moving forward with those 4 projects. And the 4 projects being completely rebuilding 2 fire stations, completely rebuilding the police station, and rebuilding or remodeling the police annex across the street. And there are basically 5 actions that are happening right now in parallel from bond counsel as to who we're buying a bond. We're going to be hiring a project manager to move forward with a project. These are all major projects. We are also going to be moving forward with designs and implementations and an implementation process as well separately. We can start spending some of the money, the bond money, pre-spending it now for what we need to do. And then when we start issuing these bonds, and we can issue the bonds all at once, we can issue it in multiple tranches, so $20 million at a time, or however much we need, and start moving it. And we can recoup the costs that we're spending right now. So if we spend, say, $1 million for these buildings and design, we can recoup those costs when the bonds are issued and get that back. So there will be a bond oversight council, and we did discuss the basics of what that would look like. Councilmember Lowenstein talked about the school district, how they set up theirs. We talked about how possibly using the charter committee and we set that up. And we also voted to start approving these multiple different pathways going forward to start the process now to rebuild the fire and police stations and completely from ground up. And they're talking about, designs, what they're going to look like. And the first thing out of the mouth, which I did not really like at all, was the city public works director said, we only have $93 million. Yeah, I was like, wait a second. Yes, I fully realize that $93 million put in the hands of a bunch of politicians can go quickly. And that's why it's very important that we have people up there making the proper decisions and we're not overbuilding or building, luxury palaces. We are building what we need. We're building it well for the next 50 years. Should be the lifespan of the buildings. So it was on my community meeting back in August. Somebody said, what happens if we don't spend the money? And somebody else said, when you give a certain set of money, they're going to spend it. And that's probably true. So I've already had my conversation with city manager and said, listen, I don't want that mindset. The mindset needs to be, how do we come in under budget, build what we need, and come back under budget? That should be the goal here, because if we're going to expending all the money at once or exactly as is, we're going to end up over budget. And that's the last thing that I want to see. Yeah, so that's the Measure FP. Any questions on that? Any comments on that for the bond? It's going to be a multi-year process.
Go look at Manhattan Beach to see what they've done with their money.
Unfortunately for us, Manhattan Beach took a different tack, which I think was far more responsible, which was they started building the construction of the designs and phases and plans and asked the residents what they wanted and what they would approve, and they went down that path first and foremost. Then when they went out to the public to get the bond, they already had public insight, public input. There was no consternation. It was approved lock, stock, and barrel. So they went a different tact, and so when they went out and got their bonds or approval for the bonds, they already had plans and designs ready to go. So they were construction ready, almost construction ready at that point in time. And we are behind the curve in that way. So we're starting really at square zero. Any other questions or comments on that? If not, I will go to the next item, which is cannabis. In the world of cannabis, we've been working on cannabis since 2018 in Redondo Beach. So actually, I would argue and say this way before 2018. So when I got on the council in 2017, we had just passed a moratorium on retail cannabis. And we did that because Proposition 64 passed in Redondo Beach with a 65% and passing statewide, because it was a statewide measure, was with, I don't know what the exact percentage was, but it was overwhelming. And so that allowed for the retail cannabis shops to be opened up and retail cannabis to be consumed. And that led to us passing the moratorium. When I got into office, I made sure we had that moratorium, went from a temporary to a full-time permanent moratorium until we can get our ducks in a row with what we wanted to see. And in 2018, we started a task force for cannabis. It was city manager's task force. It sat there and languished for a number of years. They did some work, came back here and there. Eventually came back to us in 2021, 2022, right in there, where we started getting in serious earnest to start moving forward with cannabis. And we have had a tremendous amount of meetings on this. Let's see here. If I can count real quick, thinking about looking at this location. Let's see here. I don't have the number here directly from you. Basically, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 city council meetings, 18 city council meetings on this subject since 2018. We've passed the zoning for this already as to where, and we've implemented zoning as to where the cannabis can go for retail cannabis. We've set up buffer zones. In fact, I will going to show my cannabis map, buffer map right now on the screen so everyone sees this. It is not, this was all done very publicly. Went through public commission, planning commission, the task force. In addition to that, share my screen, share. There we go. This is the buffer map. This is what it looks like citywide. Zooming in here, we'll start off in North Redondo, Lawndale High School with the buffer map, 1,500 feet away from any school and 900 feet away from certain sensitive use places such as parks. So that leaves only this little corner of Manhattan Beach Boulevard and Inglewood available. In District 5, Dale Page Parks, Councilmember Barron, who was adamantly against and opposed to cannabis of all types. I will stop right here, pause for a moment, and say this. We have to allow, by state law, delivery of cannabis into Redondo Beach for retail purposes. What that means is we don't know what cannabis companies are delivering product into Redondo Beach. We're not taxing it. We don't have a business license for them. We don't have a bill of sale in terms of what they're selling. We are purely trusting it's all coming from outside of Redondo Beach. It's literally some person in a van going around delivering it to people that are buying it online. And we're not able to manage any of the sales of cannabis right now in Redondo. So retail wise, because it's delivery. By putting in a retail shop and having a retail license, we're gonna have 2. That allows us to go after illegal cannabis shop and illegal cannabis sales and start to do some serious enforcements across the board. And so looking on Artesia Boulevard, Councilmember Barron, who's adamantly opposed to all of this, wanted to get all of Artesia Boulevard off the map. If you look at this, there's only one building here, a couple of buildings here, a couple of buildings over here. This building here in yellow with the red circle, these 2, these had prior cannabis shops or retail locations that were evicted, and those locations are no longer available. In fact, this shop right here has a rather large let's just say artwork that a lot of people are not too happy about. By having this process and system set up, we can actually regulate and not allow that type of artwork from that being on that building. So right now we don't have an ability to say no to that. Let's see here. This brings us over to other parts of District 4, the Galleria. This is all allowed uses over here, the Nordstrom, the Rack area, Islands, the South Bay Galleria. I got that included in case the South Bay Galleria wanted to include a cannabis shop because it is an enclosed facility. We have an officer there 24/7, which they pay for. Looking down here to aviation, this is where the Big Lots is at here. Again, this little yellow spot in red is a prior cannabis shop that had an eviction done on it. And so that is ineligible to be used. It's also within a buffer zone of a sensitive use. So
that
we
was
have
a
this
church.
It was a church, yes. And
That was a
another,
church.
yes, cannabis church. One of 2 churches what we've had. Again, here on aviation, this corner, again, same thing. If you notice something here, there's a lot of illegal cannabis shops that were in Redondo Beach. They are not easy to get rid of, but they are easy to get rid of if you have a legal cannabis system retail that's set up. You just go to the judge and say, we have a legal way of doing it right here. Here it is. And the judge will order an immediate shutdown of that particular shop, and we can go in there immediately and shut them down. Otherwise, it's a long, long process to try to shut it down, and very time consuming for the city attorney's office, who's busy dealing with the homeless issue. So here's the 190th. Only a couple shops available 190th, including the Lamps Plus over here. So I don't see that really being available. Here on District 2, right here. This corner is being worked on over here. This big red building. These two shops over here. There is a sensitive use here. It's probably in this shopping center. It's probably a study or learning. It could be the dance center. And then there's some commercial shops here on Catalina, which would be available, but they're all booked up right now, so I don't see that happening. That's the rental center here. And going along here on PCH in District 2, you have these commercial properties at Torrance Boulevard that are available. And then when you look at District 1, you see this entire commercial area of District 1 that's available. So I'll just tell you right now, there's probably going to be a commercial cannabis shop here in District 1, South Redondo. It's why I've taken such a significant interest on this, to make sure it gets done correctly and we get a good quality operator. So when those complain about on Artesia Boulevard or anywhere else of availability of this product or other products, I'll just tell you that South Bay beach cities, in particular, beach cities, Redondo Beach, Hermosa, has more alcohol licenses per square mile than East LA and other parts of LA County, the highest in LA County. And the District 1, South Redondo here, will have the greatest affinity to having a cannabis shop. So I am going to make sure that we do it correctly. So that's going to come back for a first reading in January. And I want to tell you that it's very, very important to me that we do this correctly. We can derive a ton of revenue off of it. All the operators, people I've talked to, $10 million on average per location. A lot of money coming in from outside the city. PV, Manhattan Beach, Torrance will all come to our city. We have the ability to get a quality operator investing a significant amount of money into Redondo Beach on these buildings, and letting us profit off the tax revenue. So we set the tax revenue at 4.5% for cannabis, in addition to the 1% of sales tax revenue that we get off of it. So Gene, it's your hand is up first, and then I will go to some of the questions and comments in the chat.
Yeah. At the beginning of this, or maybe not the beginning, but Jonathan Betko was very involved and very pro cannabis in the city. And I didn't hear everything he said, but I think he spoke at the council meeting this week, and he's against it now. And it had something to do with the testing, and that the state of California isn't properly testing the product. Do you know what he's talking about, and what's
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought it up. So in 2017 when we started this, and 2018 when we did the task force, I actually chose Jonathan Savetko because he is in the industry. He came across as a very professional individual who knows a lot about the industry, and he was on our city manager's task force, and they made a lot of recommendations on that. Little did I know that he was really going for a license here in Redondo. He had a license in Montebello for delivery, and he opened up in 2020, I want to say 2021, 2022, right in there. That license has since been rescinded by the city of Montebello, and they're going through a revocation process for the conditional use permit, which is actually all very helpful because
Why?
he has not been paying his community benefit fees for the city. It's $50,000 a year. There were 15 delivery licenses handed out in Montebello, And I want to be very clear with people that I have been going to other cities across LA County. I have relationships with elected officials from across LA County. So I can just simply call up pretty much any city and say, hey, what's going on with cannabis in your city? Culver City, Pasadena, Montebello, wherever it may be, Torrance, which doesn't allow it, but they have it in their unincorporated areas. So Montebello handed out 15 licenses. They said $50,000 a year community benefit fees. If you don't pay it, we're going to kick you out. So there are 2 licenses in Montebello that stopped paying their community benefit fees. And both of those license holders are have lost their business license. I know one for sure. I think the other one has as well. And then the revocation of their business or conditional use permit is being revoked now in early January as well. They're going through that process. So to your point with the product that he is talking about over and over again, yes, there have been recalls of product that has been tested to be something contamination, whatever it may be. We hear about recalls every single day in the food market, whether it's spinach from a pig in Salinas, or I'm not joking with that, by the way, lettuce. We hear about recalls, food safety recalls, Chick-fil-A, Burger King, what's that? Chipotle. We heard about recalls in all sorts of areas. Cars get recalled all the time, safety issues. So that means the system is actually working. So I want to make sure that we all understand this. When there's a recall, that means product is being tested and product is being brought off the market because it's being deemed unsafe, and that's a positive thing. So that's not happening in the illegal black market. And I see a comment here, Joan. Yes, it's all about stopping the black market and making sure that we have an environment that we can regulate, tax, enforce, and hold people accountable. Because right now, with the dozens of companies that are delivering into Redondo Beach, we can't hold anyone accountable. It's basically impossible. And by having a retail system here in Redondo Beach, we can hold people accountable, and the delivery system will go away, and we will be able to have a system where we can hire another police officer, go after enforcement, and do education, and ensure that we have a positive way forward, a good way forward moving forward. So, yeah, let's see here. Any other comments or questions on that? Hope that answered your question, Gene. I see a comment in here, 2017, black market. Yes. Thank you, Nicholas, for the kudos. I really appreciate that. That kind of leads me to the end of the meeting. If anyone has any other thing to set in terms of events, we've had a ton of events this last year, this last month for New Year's.
I had a question, Nils, about that gentleman LaRue who showed up last night to talk about the prosecution that he's facing because of the height of his trees in his yard. I've heard about that from other people that we know, that when their neighbor gets mad at them, they call code enforcement, and they single them out, and then all of a sudden you have somebody from code enforcement showing up and knocking on their front door and saying, "Oh, your hedge is 6 inches too high. You're going to have to trim it down," or whatever. What's going on with that ordinance?
It's a great question. So I heard about this a while back. I thought it was being looked into. So there is an ordinance on your driveway, and you can't have a tree or bush higher than a certain level. So that way, when you back out of your driveway, you can see if a person is walking by or a kid on a bike. It's a safety issue, right? I've heard of this hedge rule being enforced on neighbors because neighbors don't like each other.
Right.
The city of Redondo Beach does not drive around and enforce this rule. So this rule, I heard about him a few months ago. It's not my district. He came down. It's the first time I ever saw him. I believe it's greenredondo.com. I want to say he had a petition I hear what he's saying. I think there's a ways we can do to fix this. I need to go reach out to him. In fact, I was on his website. He actually has a former council member and his hedges on there. So this is I don't know why this was started and why the city is going for. I don't personally get involved in these types of actions. I really can't. But we can change the rules. So if there's something that we can do to change the rules, I think we should do it. And go from there. Update on our neighborhood voices. Our neighborhood voices has just opened up a 501c3. I am the secretary treasurer for it. A guy named Michael is up in the Bay Area. He's the president. We are moving forward with education campaign in addition to the C4, which is the political arm. And we're moving forward with getting funders, large funders, big fish funders, with moving forward on getting volunteers and supporters and events. Our neighborhood voices, it's going strong. There's been some change just in the membership in terms of leadership, I should say, in terms of people moving forward. If you don't know what our neighborhood voices is, it is a statewide initiative to change our state constitution to return all zoning back and make it a municipal affair of every city. So if you don't know, I'm gonna throw a link into the chat right now. The state of California is stealing our rights and ability to zone our city properly. This is why we had to have our ballot measure or charter change in November. This is why we have to zone for update our zoning to allow for 3,400 net new units in Redondo Beach. The state is telling us exactly where we can put housing and how much, and they will decide and say if it's okay or not okay. It is taken out of our hands, and now they do a whole bunch of other laws that try to force our hand in approving developments. Our neighborhood voices is the answer to that, and it's a statewide initiative. It is the equivalent to Proposition 13. If you don't know, Proposition 13 is the property tax initiative that keeps your property tax as is when you buy it, and Proposition 20, which created the California Coastal Commission. These are two propositions that were first in the United States. In fact, we're the only ones in the United States of America that have Proposition 20, i.e., Coastal Commission, the strongest, best thing we have to protect our coastline. And this will fall into that same category when it's passed. It's grassroots. It is just like Prop 13, Prop 20. It was grassroots. It was a repudiation of the development that's happening along our coastline on a development in our cities and taking away of our rights from Sacramento, taxing us to death. Same line, question here, Al Mursucci Ben Allen. Al Mursucci has been a fantastic proponent of City Redondo Beach and local land use. Ben Allen tends to not take public positions and be off the floor, so he can't vote on it, which does not record it as a no vote. It's not recorded as a yes vote. It's just recorded as not there. So while he says he supports us, he kind of does by not voting on these things. He's not outspoken like Assemblymember Al Mursucci, who represents us here in Redondo. So I want to give props to Al Mursucci for that. He's spoken up many times. Land Use Commission, State Lands Commission, and many other places. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I want to wish everyone a great holiday season. Come on down to South Redondo. Go have dinner in Riviera Village and then go over to the Seaside Lights over in Torrance. Go walk the Seaside Lights or do it in reverse. They're free. There is no free parking in the Riviera Village until December 24th. I'm getting a ton of emails and comments on that. December 24th is when free parking starts in the Riviera Village. Yes, I see the hand down, fingers down. The Grinch has stolen Christmas. I can't even tell you how many complaints that the business district is having down there. It is just so sad to see. Sales are down, by the way, and parking amount of parking what do you call it? Parking permits that they sell are down as well in the city of Redondo Beach. So the city of Redondo Beach in the last budget cycle raised parking permit fees when them go up, and increased parking meter fees, and got rid of free parking. And the result is less business, less parking permits being issued or being sold, and it is what it is.
Well, you can
So
thank the three councilmen from the north side of town for that. Every single one of them. You know,
yeah,
but when it came to metered parking along Artesia Boulevard, they didn't want that. But they sure were quick to eliminate free parking in the village, which was so unfair.
yep, yep. So any other comments, questions? Nancy, your hand is raised.
Yeah, and also no free holiday parking at the pier.
Oh, good point. Absolutely no free holiday parking at the pier, actually. They don't even get a week.
Nothing.
Oh boy. Yeah, they forgot about that. All right, Wayne, your hand is up.
Well, I say also don't forget about not the parking fees, but
Alexa,
the
turn off the
fees
spotlight.
the fees in general from the city. I mean, I was at the clerk's office the other day. If you try renting any of the rooms, like say Alta Vista Park, it used to cost $110. Now it's $400.
Oh, oh my God.
Thank you. And that's only part of it. I looked at the sheet. I was at the council when it was being voted on and discussed hearing the whole thing. But when you look at it on a spreadsheet, man, bad idea. But anyway,
Yep.
that's how we pay for crossing guards for other people that we don't use for it.
Wish the mayor would have vetoed it. It would have been better. Vetoed all
Exactly.
those things. Nancy, your hand is up.
And they also increased the fee for concealed carry permits from about $65 to $500. Really?
Right,
Wow.
That's
right,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
If Bill had been the mayor, he would have vetoed all of that.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and the current guy just looked the other way. You
And
know, so disappointing.
they spent all of our savings as well. We've been saving money up for years to do things, and that's all spent. And yeah, it's just, I voted no on all that stuff. I just not a big fan. All right. So, anyone else? Seeing none, I really want to thank everyone for showing up, being involved in the community meeting, being online, Facebook. I saw a ton of people on Facebook. Thank you very much. Feel free to email me. Just want to remind everyone, City Hall was going to be closed from next week, Monday, Tuesday, I believe. Monday, Tuesday. From Tuesday onwards until January 2nd, which is roughly 2 weeks, week and a half, 2 weeks. And so you will not be able to get permits or anything else, pay for anything. No one will be there. And I want to wish everyone a fantastic holiday season, great Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever. Kwanzaa, thank you. I was thinking about that one. There's some new ones too as well. And a happy new year. It's been a great year. Staff has worked hard. Your council has worked hard, regardless of what you hear just now. We've all worked really hard.
We've all paid our taxes.
We got our elections coming up this next year. We have a lot to be thankful for, a lot to be happy for. And I want to thank the volunteers on all the commissions out there as well for all the work you've done this last year. And it's been good. So we're going to look forward to another great season next year. And with that said, I will see you all at my next community meeting in January, online and in person. See you guys later.
Merry Christmas.